It was a crisp October evening when Rahul and his friends Vikram, Arjun, and Neha decided to gather for one of their usual weekend hangouts. The four of them were inseparable, always cracking jokes and sharing stories in between their classes at the university. Rahul was the quiet one, often watching his friends make fun of each other, but always ready with a witty comeback when it mattered. The university was one of the oldest in the country, with sprawling grounds and ancient buildings that were so old they looked like they might crumble at any moment. Rahul had heard stories of the university's history, its haunted past, the legends of rooms that no one dared to enter, and whispers of spirits that roamed the campus at night. But like any rational person, he chalked it up to old myths meant to scare freshers. Nothing more. That was until they all gathered in the dorms one Saturday night, nursing cups of chai and debating whether to study or head out for a movie. It was during one of these conversations that Neha, usually the most practical and least superstitious of them all, dropped the bombshell. Have you guys ever heard about room 43 in the old academic block? Neha asked, stirring her chai absently. Rahul's ears perked up at the mention of room 43. He had heard the name before, but never really paid much attention to it. It was always just another part of the campus's urban legends. Room 43. Isn't that where they say some student disappeared? Vikram asked with a grin, clearly trying to get a rise out of Neha. Neha nodded. Yeah, it's real, you know. They say no one goes up there after dark. The last person who tried, well, he was never seen again. Rahul couldn't help but chuckle. Are we really doing this again? Ghost stories in college? He said, rolling his eyes. But Arjun, always the curious one, leaned in closer, his eyes sparkling with mischief. Come on, it's a weekend. We're stuck here. What's the worst that could happen? Let's go check it out. Rahul laughed. You're seriously considering going to a haunted room? But despite himself, something about the idea tugged at Rahul's curiosity. Later that night, after a hasty dinner, the four friends found themselves standing in front of the old academic block. It was past midnight, and the university was silent. The ancient building loomed ahead, dark and imposing, with only the flickering lights from a distant street lamp illuminating the pathway leading to it. The air was cold, sending a shiver down their spines as they approached. This place gives me the creeps, Neha muttered, her voice low. Vikram, ever the prankster, smirked. Don't tell me you're scared now. Arjun led the way up the narrow staircase, his flashlight flickering in the dark. Rahul, despite trying to stay calm, felt an unsettling feeling crawling up his spine. The building seemed unnaturally quiet, like it was holding its breath. When they reached the third floor, the hallway stretched out before them, dimly lit by weak bulbs. Room 43 should be down here, Arjun whispered, pointing to a door at the very end of the hallway. The number 43 was barely visible, etched in chipped paint on the wooden door. The door itself looked like it hadn't been opened in years, rusted, with the wood warped and cracked. Neha hesitated. Guys, maybe we should just go back. This feels wrong. But Vikram pushed the door open with a creak, revealing the room inside. The air was thick with dust, and the room looked like it hadn't been touched in years. An old desk, covered in papers and books, stood in the middle. A single window with broken panes let in a weak stream of moonlight. On the far wall, the paint was peeling, and there was a strange, cold feeling in the air, almost as if the room was holding its breath. "See? It's just a dusty old classroom," Vikram said, walking in and turning on his flashlight. But as his light swept over the room, Rahul noticed something strange. In the corner of the room, hidden under a pile of forgotten papers, was a dark red stain on the floor. It looked old, like it had been there for years, but it still made Rahul's stomach turn. "Hey, that looks like blood," Neha said, her voice trembling slightly. "That's just old paint," Arjun said quickly, but even he didn't sound as confident as he had earlier. Just then, the door slammed shut with a loud bang. Whoa, what was that?" Vikram shouted, jumping back. They all froze, their breaths caught in their throats. For a moment, there was complete silence. But then, from the corner of the room, they heard it. A faint whisper. "You shouldn't be here." The words sent a cold chill through Rahul's body. It was soft, almost a sigh, but it was unmistakably clear. The others heard it too. "Did you hear that?" Neha gasped, her face pale. Rahul turned towards the door, but the handle wouldn't budge. He tried again, pulling it with all his strength, but it felt as if something on the other side was holding. It shut. Panic began to set in. "We need to get out of here," Rahul said, trying to keep his voice steady. But then the whispers grew louder, clearer. The voice now came from all directions, surrounding them, filling the room. "Leave now, before it's too late." The walls seemed to close in on them, the temperature dropping drastically. Rahul's breath misted in front of him as his heart raced. Suddenly, there was a loud crash from behind them. The desk, which had been stationary, suddenly toppled over. Papers flew into the air like they were caught in a violent gust of wind. Then they saw it. A shadow, dark and formless, creeping toward them from the far corner of the room. It moved like liquid darkness, slowly, silently. Rahul's heart thudded painfully in his chest. "Run!" Vikram screamed. But as they turned to flee, the door slammed shut once more, and they were plunged into darkness. The shadow was closer now, almost on top of them. They could feel its presence, suffocating, overwhelming. "Rahul!" Arjun cried, his voice breaking. "Help!" But it was too late. The darkness engulfed them all. The next morning, the police found the old academic block locked and abandoned. Room 43 had been sealed off years ago, and no one had entered it for decades. But the four friends were nowhere to be found. No trace, no sign of struggle. Just empty, silent rooms. Rahul's phone, found later in the hallway, had one last message written on it. "You should have never gone there." The university, shaken by the disappearance of its students, shut down the building for good. But rumors still persisted. Some say the students never left. And on certain nights, if you stand near the building, you can still hear whispers on the wind. Leave before it's too late.